Just a minute, we need to get you.
Yes, I'm from Bombay, India, and I'm here in the US last 25 years.
Great.
I'm doing the business here, the motel business.
Well, we had a really good experience last night. This is an excellent room.
Excellent.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thanks for the comment. I appreciate that, and I want you to come here all the time.
Okay, anytime we're here, we'll come here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, just I give you the car, you know, give me the toll-free number, just make the reservation and you all set.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a big old barn over there with a big old house. Another big old barn with some big old cows. This is a big old country. We're just outside of New Glarus, Wisconsin, which is the home of the New Swiss village. Check these farms out. Boy, that's a huge big old barn. Well, I just wonder where the big old house is. There's a big old house up on the hill. It's a big old hill. Okay, we're coming into New Glarus, Wisconsin. Kind of a nice little farm scene here. Big old barns and stuff. Okay, we're on our way to Mount Horeb to see Little Norway. This is, yeah, coming up. There's Mount Vernon. Got a lot of mountains around here. Just past Monticello. This is some beautiful country, probably very typical of Wisconsin. Hey, we got the sun out today too, George. Yep. Check it out.
I'll tell you one thing, it's a good day for the race.
What race is that?
The human race.
Oh, right.
Right.
This is Mount Vernon, Wisconsin. Just saw this huge big house over here and had to get a picture of it. It's maybe unincorporated, but it's sure got some of those big old Midwestern homes in it. This home looks pretty typical too. It's got a tin roof on it, a metal roof, and brick construction. Kind of a nice little country town. Here we are in Mount Horeb, not too far from New Norway. Interesting.
We're here in this corner store.
We're on our way into Little Norway. This is really a wooded area. Just pretty dry back in here. Don't know what we're going to see when we get down here. Probably Little Norway.
Big surprise.
Yep, this is really a wooded area. We're approaching a place called Little Norway. There it is. Well, here's a sample of some Norwegian art as we enter Little Norway. It says Velkommen. This is inside the gift shop at Little Norway.
And then we'll go see the buildings. So just follow me, please.
Now, would you repeat your name?
Grace Peterson.
Okay.
The history of Little Norway. But this is a beautiful little valley, settled by Norwegian people back in 1856. They came into the area here with the idea that this looked a little bit like Norway, and so they wanted to settle here and raise their family. Their names are Mr. and Mrs. Houston Olsen Hogan. And then later in life, they changed the name to Austin. I don't know why. Austin doesn't sound Norwegian, but that's the way they did it. They raised 4 daughters, and of course the daughters grew up and married and moved out of the valley. The Austins lived here until 1920. And then after they passed away, the building sat empty for a while. And then another Norwegian family by the name of Dahle purchased the valley here. His name was spelled D-A-H-L-E, so it would have been Dahle as far as pronunciation. More or less kind of a resort area just for the family. And then in 1937 it turned into a museum, and it has been a museum then for 50-some years. At the end of the tour we'll go into a stave church which was brought from Norway, and we'll talk about that when we get over there. Sources of heat and all in this building. Okay, we're going into the first doorway here, which you notice is quite short. As Norwegians we say pass på hodet, which means watch your forehead. Okay. Throughout this nice building you'll see a big collection, and most all of it is a collection owned by the Dahle family. However, we do have a number of trunks that have been contributed in here by the local community. The little boxes throughout all of the buildings are referred to as Tina boxes, and they were used for food storage. Some of them had a very unusual design on them. Some of them would have the rose mulling, which of course is quite well known by the Norwegians. And they had a very unusual way of opening it back in the middle 1800s. And it kind of opened like that, and then of course it would close back up. But it's put together with willow and of course made out of wood that would soak, and it would go around for you that way. The bed over here with the rope spring had a corn husk mattress on that, and that would be a large bag of course, and then they put the husks of the corn into the bag, and that was their mattress. Be careful here, it's a low doorway again. Alright, this was the original granary, and of course if you look at the floor, it's the original flooring. And you can take pictures any place you'd like to. The furniture here is Eastlake, and that's the type of furniture that was made here in America. If you were to measure the bed, you'd see that the bed is perhaps made a little shorter. Sometimes they put like huge feather-tipped pillows up behind their head, and they slept in kind of a half-sitting position. And that was to kind of take care of their health problems. The costumes that are in the far corner over here, the blue items, are new costumes, but they are referred to as a bunad. It's spelled B-U-N-A-D, and they're a type of costume that's worn for celebration for the Norwegian people. These are the newer ones. When we get into the next area, you'll see the older ones. Like pieces of wood that have been put together with a backing on it, and then you can roll that up. And you carry it with you and under your arm, and you can use it whenever you'd like to do some work. The sewing machine is a Wilson Wheeler, dating in the early 1800s. That's a very unusual foot pedals to that, I think. The clock is a Seth Thomas clock, and many of them were made for, many years back, but a lot of them were really made. The cabinets that are shaped into the corners date in the early 1800s, and this is kind of the way they were done. They build it right into the corner, and therefore you've got the use of the corner. Bedspread that's on the bed is gotten this fragile.
So the red is just another blanket.
Yeah, the red is just something underneath. Yes.
Do you sell things like this?
By Mr. Hobson, and he was married to Isaac Daly's sister. Isaac Daly being the one that started Little Valley. And the Hobsons built this after he retired. He was a professor at the University of Wisconsin, and he built this, and then they kind of took over Little Norway because Mr. Isaac Daly died. And then the grandson now is the manager, and he does live in this home. Also, we have been carved into clothes. They're carved by a man from Mount Horeb. This building was originally a horse barn. Not much of a horse would get in there now. But the board that has decided to keep the building wants to just at least keep it right here, whether it looks like a horse barn or not. A worship of that sort of thing. It was like frightening things away if you had a dragon on your buildings. Extending it so it would haul those longer logs. Kuburula, of course, means a wooden-wheeled wagon. Lee family, when they kind of took over here and wanted to make it into a resort area for their family. The side of the roof, of course, is to insulate the building. Keeps it a little warmer in the winter, a little cooler in the summer. Because we don't have the same temperature gauge as they have in Norway, this does have to be replaced every so many years.
Is that fairly common to have sod roofs in Norway?
Oh, in Norway, all over. I think maybe, I was there about maybe 12 years ago, and I saw a lot of sod roof cabins. I think maybe more in the mountains than you will, in the city area, but the temperature must be right for doing that. Keeping it growing, of course, insulates it and keeps it together,
Sure.
Family. And it was the first building that was built here. Building the barn doesn't seem like the first thing you would do. You think you'd build your house. But this family came in a covered wagon, and then they found the shelter of a cave. So they lived in the cave, and it is up alongside the house, and I'll show it to you when we get up there. But this was the original barn. Then, of course, when the second family came, this was going to be a place for the family. So that's why you see the railing and the chimney and all of the differences that you'd have for people living here. It's beautiful. We'll go all the way through this and fences and all.
Okay. That bird doesn't even look real. But
No.
I did see
This
it
is a
move.
real robin.
Yeah, it's real.
You look real close, you can see him blink his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be a robin.
Sheep were very important. They would produce the wool. That's why they would make their items that they needed. We have lots of beautiful things throughout all of this building, I believe. The dining room table and chair set here came from Oslo, Norway, and it's a beautiful museum set. The items that are on the table here are what they call ale bowls, and this one dates way back to 1793. And so as you look at it, you realize the ale would go in here, and the proper procedure was to pass this around and everybody would get a drink out of the same bowl. I don't think they could have you doing that now. I say we have too many germs. But when I was in Norway, they served us a drink that was called akvavit. It didn't taste very good to me. Very, very strong. But I said maybe that took care of any of the germ problems with these.
Is this rose mulling on these?
It is a type of rose mulling. So you'll see different types coming from different areas, It's what I would say rose mulling, yes.
And on the chairs, kind of.
Chairs is a different type again, and each chair has a little different design, as you'll notice as you look at each one of them.
That looks like the stars and the moon. And
Relating to life, I guess.
Look at this gold.
It came from Norway, and come here to visit. And they say not necessarily. But when I watched the
this is a
Olympics,
big bowl.
it seemed like so many things were bright red.
Oh, okay.
So it maybe goes back generations,
Oh, okay.
Blue actually, I think, was a little maybe more of a color for them, and they said the way they came up with that blue color was that they could mix the very, very old piece.
Carved from the stump of a
The
tree.
table that's in the center becomes a chair. And the picture frame
This is
that's
a
right next to me
wedding-
here was
wedding
made by a
spoon.
sailor crossing the ocean. It's
To
made from
signify
driftwood. There are
unity.
no nails or
Piece
glue
of
to put it
wood
together.
carved out of
Each
one
piece
piece
is
of
put
wood.
together, like a puzzle, or you were going to store in there. Then, of course, the second family made it into a kitchen area. So the stove here belonged to the second family, the Daly family. And on the stove, you see the pancake machine is here. The krumkake iron is over here. And that makes that nice Norwegian cookie that's rolled up. Some people will call it strudel. It is very good. These are the rosette irons. And they're generally shaped like this. They're dipped into a batter and then into the oil. And of course then it releases, and it's a very tasty type of dessert.
Did they make able Caesars also?
Yeah, they did. I think, that's kind of Scandinavian, more than Norwegian, maybe.
How did this work?
Well, the pancake batter go in here, and then you flipped it, and you kept working all the way down. Can you imagine how busy you'd be?
Oh. Why do you flip it? Oh,
Well,
just
so you
to-
get the other side. See, this side will stiffen up your pancake.
Oh.
And then it goes to the other side. Then you're ready for another one.
Oh, I see. That's just a tray to hold it.
Mhm,
Oh, okay.
Eating. And then when one gets cold, you go back and get a warm one. There again, this is the mango tray. This one is just new to me this year. It was made a while ago. It was made by a pastor that retired and decided he was going to do some hand carving, and so he did this. The oldest one we have is on the table here, and that dates back in the 1700s. And it's a type of iron. It may be used the way it's set up there with the round piece, and then you kind of roll that back and forth, and it kind of irons out or stretches out whatever you've had on there. All right, I'll talk just a little in the kitchen here, and then we'll go upstairs. And you would flatten down maybe tablecloths or dresser scarves or things like that.
A thumb. Or a hand.
Over here we have a board, which of course has got the knives in it, which used to make sauerkraut. Sauerkraut, of course, is a food that's accepted by a lot of people because it would go a long ways, I think. The other piece here, of course, is for sharpening your knife. And these are the tubes, which is a branch off a tree, and it was used as a mixer for blending. And you would move it back and forth like this, and it would kind of blend your foods together. The beautiful piece of hardinger on the table here again, I think is really gorgeous. Takes lots and lots of hours to do this. Grooving works better than the flat one.
This is for making less.
The table here has a double use. The tabletop will slide to the side, and down in the bottom here you'd have a big box. Then you'd have a feather tick mattress in there, and you'd have an extra bed if you needed it.
Oh my goodness.
You remember this was a barn, so at one time, of course, it would have had the hay and the feed that they needed for their cattle.
Those
The
big.
second family, of course, has turned it into a beautiful museum for display of items like these. The bunnads that you see, of course, like I mentioned, are the older ones, and there is a different name on each one that identifies from what part of Norway they are from. The bed that's over in the far corner over here with a curtain around it was used in homes sometimes. This is just a miniature, but it was used because their homes were very cold, and of course putting the curtain around it would house in the body heat. Here, I'll tell you, this is the way they built them at first, and it was mostly to conserve space. They would put that third leg or the first leg up in behind into a corner. And of course it would identify different areas of Norway.
There's a set of stairs from the other room downstairs next to it.
You can go over there if you'd like to. Just careful as you cross the stairway.
This is a sleigh that has very historical a lot of historical significance. We just don't know what it is.
Horse storage. The top part of the building is where you stored your extra bedding, your winter clothes, your rugs, things that you really didn't have room for in your home. The lower part of the building is where you stored your foods you needed for the entire year. The building itself is built up on pillars with a rock on top of the pillar, and that keeps this building mouse-proof.
Oh.
The steps are kept away from the building for the same reason, to keep the mice out of it.
Oh, the steps.
Yeah.
It generally was built a distance away from the home,
Yeah.
and that was in case they need storage.
This was the original house of the
This is the original.
little settlement. Yeah. This is the original home. However, when they first moved here, they lived in a cave. And here you can see the cave. And the first child they lived there for the year, and the first child was born when they lived in a cave. Side, this is the porch area, screened-in porch area of the original home. Well, now we'll go inside.
This item was used for storage of yarn, and it was an item that you could measure, you know, how much was coming off of it. This was used for flax. Flax was used as a grew in the fields, of course, and then eventually made into a linen material. Is what you could do with it. The pictures that you see throughout all of the buildings were done by Mrs. Hobson, and she was a sister to Mr. Isaac Daly.
Did she design that herself as she went along with it?
I think she maybe did. I know there are a number of things that she did design herself. The first was at the time they built the home, there was a place they could order a stove from, and it came from Galena, Illinois, in on the train, of course, and then down into the valley here. The pictures on the wall over here, and they're not. He wrote the words for the national anthem for Norway. The man on the bottom, his name is Henrik Ibsen. He was a famous Norwegian playwright.
It's Garrison Keillor's grandfather, wasn't it? Sorry about
I
that.
don't know.
You don't know Garrison Keillor?
No, I don't.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's from Minnesota, public radio,
Yeah, I
and
know
the
that.
Prairie Home Companion.
Yeah,
It's quite
Okay, okay,
a-
yeah.
He's always talking about Norwegians. And
Oh, he is. Yeah, yeah, that's
trying
true.
to make a joke here.
So is that really his grandfather?
No, I just
Oh,
kidding.
you just said that, okay.
Garrison Keillor,
I
one of
kind
my
of comment
favorite
on the
football
hairdos
players.
sometimes, but you know, if you look around in our own country right now, you see some pretty fancy
Yeah.
hairdos. You know?
Oh yeah, yeah, you bet.
Oh, dear.
Do you have any information on the Norwegian folks that migrated out
They may have some books up in the shop.
They look like a challenge anything. This is a cradle.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's called a garden cradle, but crib, you know, one of those little fold-about cribs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. They had 4 children in the here, so there would have been 6 people sleeping here. And that's how you kind of understand the storage unit that's right next that we talked about.
Yeah.
Things that they needed and didn't have to have immediately would be stored in that building. And I think a lot of times maybe protected, so the Stoughton area, which is not too far from here, which is another Norwegian community,
Rosemont.
and taught many, well, I'd say generations of kids and people how to rosemow. The pail that's up in the top shelf here, this is what they call a pudding pail. And that was where you would put your rummekraut. And rummekraut is a cream pudding. You cook on the stove, serve it with melted butter and cinnamon and sugar. It's bound to give you all those calories, you know. But it is a very tasty type of a pudding.
But good.
The clock that's on the shelf comes from the northern part of Norway. The portraits on the walls here are grandparents of the Daly family. These are the Dalys looking straight ahead, and these are the Kittlesons. And like they said, these
Beautiful
pictures are
clock.
much
Yeah,
older, perhaps. If you find
large pillow
something you
that's-
don't know what it is,
Could be
generally
shared
I can talk about it.
by the pounding bench. Whoops. Pounding bench is located at the Earnhardt residence, and
He's doing his
In
own
Idaho.
thing, isn't he? Yeah.
this is the
All right,
Bench,
we're ready
the
to go.
grievance
Soon
bench.
as you are.
grievance bench?
grievance bench. I think it's particularly interesting.
Place to live, so he lived in there for a while.
This little building
The
was a
next
sewing
place was a
room for the
woodshed, like this
lady
one
of the
up here,
house.
kind of. Then when the Daly family took over, they needed somebody here to take care of the buildings, and so they hired a caretaker, and we lived here for over 30 years. All right, now we're going on up to this.
I think this is a particularly interesting building, and we're going to go up there and see what that's all about. This building here that I thought was interesting turns out is a church. And we'll be going inside. It's being in.
Norwegian. Stave means pillar. And you'll see the different pillars that are going around holding this building up. Then, of course, if you look outside, stays are not always round. They can be square too. So you see the stays going up and down this way on all of this building. This building was built in Norway. It was funded by the Norwegian government. And it was a project that was suggested that they make and bring to America for the World's Fair of 1893, which is what happened. They built it, tore it down again, and then put it on the boat, got about halfway across the ocean. The boat broke down, so they had to call for a boat to come from America to help them get the boat back to Chicago or into Chicago. And of course there was a time limit for them to have this set up, just like there is for any fair. And so they said they worked day and night to finally get it established so that they could show it, and they made it just in time. So it was kind of an interesting story there. It stayed there in Chicago for a while, especially during the time when the fair was on. And then after that, the Norwegians felt that it was too expensive to try to load it and take it back, so they advertised it for sale. Now there was a gentleman that came and said he was going to buy it, but he couldn't come up with the money. And so then the Wrigley family bought it. The Wrigley family, of course, were quite famous at that time. And they bought this building, had it moved to their Lake Geneva estate. There it was all set up. The building then was used as an entertaining place for the Wrigley family. And then Mr. Daly was invited at one time to one of these business meetings. And Mr. Daly had started Little Norway. He thought this would be a beautiful addition to Little Norway. So this is how it ended up coming here to Little Norway. It was quite a job to get it down and of course load it on the train, and came in on the train. And then of course to restore this, to rebuild it, was quite a job. When they would build these type of buildings, generally they'd be just like your log houses. They'd have papers that would identify where the boards were to go. Well, in the moving of this, the papers were lost. So then came the time for the local people to try to reassemble this. And I'm sure it was quite a bit of talking going on. At that
We had Summer's little house over there.
Yeah. Now what was it called again?
Mungo tray.
A mango tray.
The friction iron.
Name for an iron.
Yeah. Interesting little spinning wheel.
That is the King and Queen of Norway now. He wanted to see these places.
Another spinning wheel. Many artifacts of this church. Quite interesting.
If you have time to go over this whole
There's
blasting
a dog
case,
carriage.
you really understand the family. But if when you're ready to go back, you can cross the valley. It's going to get your feet a little wet. Or else you can go back the same way that you came, whichever way you'd like to.
All right.
Or we could go around this way?
It's better not to go that way now, because see how the little lines are put across over here?
Oh yeah.
I think the boss said they had to haul in 17 loads of dirt because it washed out when the springs come, earlier in the fall, or earlier in the spring.
There's a little miniature Alcorn, George.
That's called a gur,
Oh.
which you used to call
yeah,
sheep.
Okay.
We used to have a guide that worked here many years ago, and she would go out with that on the porch here, and she could make.
No, I never did that.
Well, they have a place in Madison in here now. It's called
This is
St.
a
Moritz.
miniature
Rudy
Alcorn.
Burkholder used
He
to
used
do
to
that
call
with
the
one of
sheep.
those big long ones.
And interestingly enough, the motel
12, 15 feet long.
lodging
yes.
of last night we
You
stayed in
really
was
good
the
job. I only saw
Alcorn.
it once. You can go on
This
the,
is really
walk around the yard any place you'd like. You just kind of look careful so you don't get in too deep.
Oh yeah, thank you.
This will get prettier all the time now.
This is
Look at the
beautiful.
flowers all planted.
Just a lovely spot. Vince talking to a newfound friend who he discovered was LDS, nice lady from Georgia, now living in Connecticut, planning a trip in the near future to Salt Lake City to the temple for a wedding, which is rather interesting. Here's Vince talking to his new friend. Just one more pan of the grounds here that are just so pretty. The weather today is just absolutely perfect. 67 degrees, 11:30 in the morning.
69 now.
Oops, temperature just shot up to 69. Thanks for that correction, Vince.
Well, tell by my Dick Tracy watch, you know, it gives the temperature,
What happened?
humidity.
Well, tell me what time it is. Mickey's big hand is on. Sorry. Crossing the little stream on the way back to the visitor center. This is one of the reasons that people moved here, because of the mountain area and these streams that were so reminiscent of Norway. And the lady explained in the hill country that actually in the wintertime it's not uncommon to get 3, sometimes 4 feet of snow here. Go.
This is a snowshoe for a horse. You put it over his hoof, it fits in there like that, and then you clamp it down like this. And then it increases the size of his hoof so he doesn't punch down through the snow when he walks in it.
This is, of course, the little barn.
You know what this is?
Snowshoes for horses. Yes. But tell us,
Sieve
Vince,
for
what,
oysters.
what is that?
Hold it like this and go in on oysters and
It's an oyster rake.
you scoop them up like that, and then the oysters that are small fall through, so it kind of is like a separator for oysters.
Yeah, if you buy that store, he's got a used car he wants to sell you.